Hi, everybody. This is Jeremy Siskind. You might know me as the author of this new book, Jazz Piano Fundamentals. And I'm actually here with my dear friend, valued colleague, and inspiration, musically and educationally, John Mortensen. Let's see, which way do I gesture? I gesture this way. And John and I have books coming out around the same time. Like I said, I have this Jazz Piano Fundamentals book 2. And John has a book called, is it Improvising Fugues?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that is available for pre-order now. I think it will be officially out in January, but you
Yeah.
want to secure your copy right now.
You
Um,
definitely do. Yeah.
yeah. You don't want to wait. It's going to be a great one. I'm excited. What sexier thing is there, like in the classical music world, more than improvising fugues? That's like
No,
as sexy as it gets.
pretty much. Yeah, which is saying a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
so John and I are doing a little video exchange. I recently told John about a big idea from my new book, and I've asked John now to share with me a big idea from his new book. So I'm very curious what he has planned or what he will improvise.
the big idea is okay. So in jazz, you have chord changes that govern your life for the most part. Of course, there's free stuff and there's Keith Jarrett, and you can go off script and be Brad Mehldau and all that. But the tradition as a whole is built on the idea that there's a clock ticking, and every so often you have a new harmony that you're given. So it might be whatever it is, okay, combinations of different kind of standard moves, circles of fifths and blues kind of things, and tritone subs. So in the course of studying those, jazz musicians get very, very fluent with what you do when it moves through those kind of predictable things and then soloing over them. So the challenge with classical music is sometimes it uses set harmonies, things that loop exactly like a chord chart, but most of the time it does not. So if you're going to break out of doing Chacon's, Passacaglia's variations on looping stuff, how do you handle the the never repeating material of the harmonic language? And how do you get a hold of the harmonic language of the Baroque or the classical with all its richness and sound like that, but also have it manageable in your head? So that's the big
Mhm.
question.
Yeah.
And what I came to just from my own experience and found effective was this thing called the Italian Partimento tradition,
Mhm.
which is having a little bit of a revival kind of in music theory and musicological circles, and it's moving into performances as well. There's even conferences on it, several conferences this year on it. And the idea is that you take the teaching system of the Neapolitan conservatories where they taught children, orphan boys, actually, um, and they would turn them into fully functioning professional musicians by the time they were 18 using the system. And the way the system works is everything comes from the bass and how the bass moves. So we talk all the time about bass motion. So if the bass is going up the scale, and I'm going to try to get some of my keyboard in here. If I'm just going up the scale by step, there we go. I'll just take 5 notes for now. There are several options they taught. And the first option is just known as rule of the octave. I'll go the rest of the way. Okay. Now notice that sounds like the most normal music you ever heard in your life. And that's because centuries of normal music are based off of this. Okay. So that's kind of the beginner's way. Then there are other ways. This is known as an 8-7-6. Okay. And this is known as a 10-9-8. And this is known as Corelli leapfrog. And This is known as the double frog. Okay, so in other words, for just a scale, an ascending scale, there's at least 8, maybe 10, depending on how you count, standardized ways of harmonizing that. And once you know those, you know every way that a Baroque musician would have looked at an ascending scale harmonically. You've learned it all.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have to do descending, you have to do various leaps, sequential leaps, chromatic, and it takes quite a while to get through all of it, but it all was taught in the Neapolitan schools. And by the time you're done, you know all the stuff about harmony that they knew. And you can do it all by just going, what will the bass do?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very quick and efficient. There's no Roman numerals. You just say the bass is going to be descending by thirds. Okay, I know the answer to that. Here's the harmony. After you do that, now you can start decorating. Okay, you can do diminutions, decorative notes, ornaments, and so it sounds more than just like structural stuff. And once you've got pretty good with your bass motions and diminutions, you are sounding like Baroque music. It sounds like legit Baroque music. There's more levels to it than that. But that's kind of the first half of the book, is using Partimento to give you that conversational ability so you can just say what you want in the harmonic language of the Baroque. And then after about 250 pages of that, we start talking about doing the specific things for fugue, which are actually, there's only about 10 really specific things you have to know for fugue if your harmony's okay. So that's the big question, how to deal with the lack of a looping chord chart. Mm-hmm. And yet have a harmonic language that can cover everything that you want to cover. Okay? So does that resonate with anything you work on in jazz?
Well, okay. I have a few reactions.
Mm-hmm.
The first is that when I think of fugue, of course, I'm thinking of Bach's 3 and 4 part fugues from the Well-Tempered Clavier, and I think of them as the most horizontal music. Right?
Yeah.
Like everything's a melody. But what you're talking about is a very vertical approach. And I assume that, you would kind of marry those two disparate ideas by saying that you kind of need to have the vertical before you can even think about the horizontal. Or is that?
Yeah. Yeah. You need a certain amount of the verticality before you can think about the horizontal. But here's where Partimento gets really interesting.
Okay.
The
Good,
basic.
I've been waiting. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. You've lost so much sleep. The basic idea of Partimento is the upper voices, the harmonies that accompany these bass motions. They can be in a variety of numbers of voices. Especially rule of the octave is real squirrely like that. It can have lots of voices. But for most of the motions, it's 2 upper voices. And so one of the motions that will be very familiar to you and actually fits Autumn Leaves perfectly is the circle of fifth, the C5. Okay. And this is almost word for word guide tone kind of theory. Okay. So if I just take C major and I'm going to do circle of fifths, I need to find the 3rd and the 7th. Okay. Now I'm not going to start on them.
You're really talking my language now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, I can't start on them because the 7th is dissonant and has to be prepared in classical music by common tone. So I'm going to start without a 7th. So I just have a 3rd and an octave. But as I go to the next one, I'm playing a bass and a 7th and a 3rd. Mm-hmm. And the way they taught the voice leading was that the bass is leaping around and the upper voices are moving by step. Which is exactly what you teach on a daily basis.
Not exactly, but yeah.
Okay, but it's more like you probably will say, well, let's just take this chunky, beautiful chord and we can put it in another range if we want to. This nice hand structure. Whereas here it's a little more strict. We're gonna keep them linear, and the one that was here is going to go here, and the one that was here is going to go here, and the one that was here is going to go there. Okay, so there are these voice leading structures. The beauty of this is that they're invertible. not just for C5, but for all of them. So this is a progression in which the bass is rising by fifths. Okay, and it sounds like this.
Love it.
And usually the way we get out of it is like this. And so on. It can go on for a while. So the thing that's interesting about this is that these upper voices can trade places. So I can go like this. Or so those upper voices can go either way. The other thing that's interesting about them is that they're in canon. They're exact imitations of each other. They're both doing the same set of intervals. They're falling by step, jumping by fourth. Etc., etc.
That's so cool.
So it has this built-in contrapuntal imitation. Okay, so even in childhood, the Neapolitan students were learning inherent marriage of counterpoint and imitation with harmony. So there are certain harmonies that have built-in imitation, and these are the ones that always show up in the beginner fugues. Okay, and they'll be embedded in the subject. Okay, so they'll see that subject and go, aha, that can be imitated like this. So the counterpoint is not a separate thing from the keyboard skills, the audiation, the improvisation, the reading, the harmony, and even style, keyboard style and diminution, all are one thing. Yes, they did written counterpoint as well. There's stacks and stacks of papers in these old libraries, but they were getting a lot of it right here. And so they would recognize instantly when a fugue subject had the possibility to do this.
Right.
Oh, that little fragment, that imitates, I know exactly how to imitate that and invert that and put it in canon and so on. So that's what I did not expect when I started studying Partimento, was this inherent counterpoint that you get kind of for free.
Right. And so you're kind of saying if you decorate these lines that are making up these different rules about intervals, then you get basically the subjects, answers,
a lot of
episodes. You get a lot of what's going on.
Now it's possible to write subjects to frustrate that process, to write subjects that are problematic. And that's kind of an advanced course, that you do. But interestingly, all of the Prix de Rome, the Rome Prize, from the Paris Conservatory, all the fugue subjects from that for years and years and years are reproduced in a treatise. And it's quite surprising to me how few of them are deadly problematic. Most of them, you look at them and you go, oh, okay, I see the tied notes. I see the suspensions inherent. I see the chromaticism. A lot of it has kind of preloaded stuff in it a little bit. And the skill is in recognizing it and teasing it out, not in creating it from nothing.
Right. And then I guess my next question would be, okay, so everything's based around the bass. Well, we know that in Bach's fugues, we rarely had like a stable bass. The bass is as melodic, roughly, as the other voices. So is it just a matter of then also decorating that bass note, or how does that all fit together? Because the whole style that you're describing is, based on the bass. Yeah,
and there are specific partimenti that are designed so you have to undecorate them and figure out what the structural notes are. But they're given to you decorated, and how it really works, like the important notes, the nougat-filled goody notes, are disguised. And you don't really know what the harmony should be until you kind of get past that decorative level. So they have this kind of reverse engineering stuff they make you do as well. Especially like Durante, Francesco Durante loves to do this. The other aspect of it is that you do have a kind of special state of matter, like plasma. It's not really liquid, it's not really gas.
Okay.
Two voices are a special state of music. And I refer to this, we talked about making up names. I use the term bicinium. It's just an old term for little two-voice compositions. And because you don't have a triad, right? All it is intervals. And so they can sound like triads. Like if I arpeggiate, okay, now the ear is hearing a triad. So I'm sort of wandering into that triadic space a little bit, but then there it's not triadic at all. It's consonance and dissonance. Okay, so that's a little bit of a separate study, and you break free from triadic music a little bit when you go into that, and that becomes something you move in and out of in a full composition. Sometimes you're really living triadically, and sometimes you're doing bichinium, and you actually don't even care. Like, is this an F major sound? I don't care. It's just these two notes, and now they're consonant, yay, now they're dissonant, okay, better resolve that. So it's a little bit different, like state of matter almost, with different physical laws.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I love practicing with just two voices or just three voices for jazz standards. I think that is really interesting, and the fewer voices, I don't know if you would agree with this. I'm trying to think if this is true. I'm going to say something that might be stupid, but with fewer voices, you almost have to have more control of the harmony. Because you have to be able to express the harmony so well with such few elements.
Yes. I think three voices is the sweet spot. Because you do have the full, well, often it's not triadic, often it's the seventh. You don't really do the fifth. And so now we're back to that C5 model that we used. And I think
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, so one of the things that fascinates me in terms of playing counterpoint from my perspective is just the sheer challenge of managing especially three voices with two hands, because it means that you're always going to have one in one hand, two in the other. Do you include exercises? Do you have favorite exercises for potentially trading a voice from one hand to the other, or passing between the hands? Do you have things that you like to practice?
Well, the first thing with any imitative stuff, particularly fugue, is you take the subject and it has to function as a melody and has to function as a bass in major and in minor. So that's the first thing you're going to do, is just run it through all those possibilities. Some subjects are not manageable as inner voices because the tessitura is too wide.
Right.
And you just can't get another voice in that hand. So you have to have some common sense about what's possible. Generally,
one of the reasons that sometimes in Bach fugues, all of a sudden it goes down from four voices to three or three to two. Is that's among the reasons, just because it's not possible to play it with another melody. And it's also
a compositional choice because it's cool to pare it down, and then back everybody comes in and it's great. Bach is the most strict about retaining the number of voices. Almost everybody else is less strict, especially the whole Italian tradition. They don't even talk about how many voice fugue it is.
That seems so core to my idea of what a fugue is.
Yeah, because we're trained on Bach.
Everything's through Bach.
Yeah, but in a lot of the, including German fugue, French fugue, but in particular Italian fugue, it's the number of entrances. Because we track that, we go, aha, there's a voice, there's a voice, there's a voice. We don't, once you get past three voices, the typical listener can't tell how many are actually in there anyway.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter. As long as you keep doing entrances at appropriate places, you're creating this polyphonic feel. And that's what they actually valued. So yeah, there's lots of examples of where they'll just break down and just do an Alberti bass in the middle of a fugue. It's not like Bach at all. It's very different.
Interesting.
Yes, you can put the subjects in inner voices. Little, narrow, stepwise ones are the best. But the easiest thing to do...
Do you ever put them like between the hands? Like,
probably.
The thumbs could potentially play the sub. That just seems so difficult as an improviser.
It just depends on how fast and what else is going on and how dumb you are. How hard a day you're having.
Pretty dumb. Turns out.
Well, the nice thing about it is nobody is really judging you at that level in public performance. Nobody's like, hey, you didn't, you put the voice in the middle, and I heard you change that sixth to a fifth at one point. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
So you get away with a lot. And in the big traditions, like the Paris Conservatory traditions, there's the really strict tradition where they had to do it according to a certain way in class, but then there's what they actually would do when they played for people. And a lot of them, yeah, a lot of them would just subject in outer voices only. Top and bottom, which is the easiest thing to do. A lot of the fugues I do are just top and bottom.
Yeah.
If it's a real busy subject. So,
John, I have a million more questions, but I guess that means that I have to buy the book. And I think we got to wrap up. Do you want to just remind people where you can pre-order the book?
On the Oxford University Press website, and I believe it's on most of the major booksellers because they distribute everywhere. And where do they get your book, Jeremy?
Oh, my book, it's best ordered from jeremysiskin.com. But if
for most quality, for highest quality.
Yeah, well, you get an autographed copy if you and a personalized thank you note. But it is available on Amazon, especially internationally. That's probably the best place to buy the paper copy. So, John, it's always a pleasure.
I enjoy our conversation. I really, the back and forth, and I like how you challenge me on stuff.
Maybe we need to have a conference proposal of some sort.
Yeah, we should
where we sit and talk, or maybe we just need to get a beer. All right, man. Take good care. Get some rest.
Always good to talk to you, Jeremy. Till next time.
I'll talk to you soon.